Okay, welcome to part 10 in this module on leading change. We're continuing to go through Kotter's 8 principles of leading change. We've talked about creating a sense of urgency, building a guiding coalition, forming strategic vision and approach, enlisting and engaging people via communication. And now we're going to talk about this next 5th principle, which is enabling people for action. So what does it mean to enable people for action? As the word enable implies, we need to make sure that people have the ability to take the action we're wanting them to take. Do they have the ability to take the actions we're wanting them to take? What do they need for them to be able to take that action? And what is standing in the way? So enabling people for action is all about giving people all the things that the skills and abilities they need to take action. And it's about removing everything in their way from being able to take the action and make the change we want them to make. That's what enabling people for action is about. So there's 2 main things. First is considering people's needs. What do people need in order to make the change you're requesting of them? So if we go back to our case study example again, we're talking about we're wanting people to change and start getting a visa and work permit through a particular foundation. That's what we want. What do they need in order to make that successful? And we need to think about lots of different things. Do they have a need for training? Are we asking them to do a skill that they've never had to do before? For example, they have to do reporting on a monthly basis in this case. What does that mean? What does that look like? How do I do my reporting? Is there a particular software application I'm supposed to use? What does that look like? I don't know. So maybe they need some training in order to do the thing we're asking them to do. Also processes. Do people have the need for a process of defining how do I do that? Again, with a work report that you have to do monthly. There's usually a very specific and detailed process and even template that you have to fill out with a lot of times when you're reporting your work. We need to define maybe what would that process look like? How would it work? How would you actually go about putting together a work report? What other people's needs people may have? Tools, resources. What kind of tools do they need? What kind of resources? What kind of equipment? What kind of technology do they need to be successful doing this? Again, if they're in our case study, if people are having to do monthly reports, does that mean they need a computer? Does it mean they need an internet connection? Does it mean they need a particular software application, Word or Excel or something else, right? What kind of tools and resources do they need to be able to successfully make the change we're asking them to do? And another need that people might have is simply encouragement. They just need some encouragement from us to say, you can do this, I believe in you, I have faith in you, you can do this. Or they might need some incentive of a reward, or they might need you just to be praying for them. What are people's needs? If we can meet their needs to help them to be able to do the thing we're asking them to do and make the change we want to see happen, they're much more likely to do it, right? Enabling people for action. The second part of enabling people for action is removing obstacles and barriers in the way. So when we started this module on leading change, one of the first things I talked about is that change is about this balance in the motivation and skills and ability people have to do something to make a change versus the amount of obstacles and barriers in the way, the challenges in the way, and which one is winning out, which one is heavier, which one do we have more of, more obstacles or more motivation and ability. Whichever one we have more of is likely to win, and whether it determines whether we see the change successfully happen or not. So one of our jobs as a change leader is to remove and eliminate and minimize obstacles and barriers in the way of our people doing what we want them to do in this change we want to see happen. So we might ask a question of ourselves, well, so who is resisting this change, what we're talking about, what we're asking? Who's resisting it and why? Oftentimes, if you start talking to people and find out why they're negative about a particular change or idea, you'll get some ideas of, oh, they might have some valid concerns about barriers, challenges, obstacles that they see possibly happening. May be very valid, and we need to address them. We need to talk about it, think about it, and decide what can we do to help deal with that particular problem or barrier. So asking who's resisting this change and why is a great question to ask. Another thing you can ask is, what's making this change so difficult or painful for people? Why are they not so happy? Why do they think it's so hard? A lot of times the answer to that question is going to be a barrier or obstacle in the way. The reason it's painful or difficult is because there's something in the way that's really hard that they have to do. What can we do about that as a change leader to minimize that pain and difficulty for people? And of course, our big question is, how do we minimize whatever obstacles and barriers are in the way? How can we minimize them or eliminate them? And to the extent to which we can do that is the extent to which we make it easier for people to make the change we're asking them to make. So in this little diagram, this cartoon on the slide, you see there's a guy standing in front of a wall. Presumably he wants to get to the other side of the wall. That's his change goal, to get to the other side of the wall. And our job as a change leader then is to identify that there's a barrier in the way and figure out, what does he need to be successful? How can we eliminate that barrier? Are there needs he has, some training he needs, some processes, some tools that might help him to get to the other side of the wall? These are the kind of questions we ask. And you can see in the example, this funny example, maybe he just needed the tool of a ladder, right? And so he was able to get over this barrier because we gave him a ladder. Maybe he needs a shovel. We need some creative thinking, and he's gonna dig a hole and get under the wall. Maybe he needs to just blow up the wall and completely remove the obstacle altogether. Or maybe we just realize we can encourage him to walk around the wall. Whatever the answer is, our job as change leaders to enable people for action is to think about what their needs are in order to make the change, and think about what obstacles and barriers are in the way and how can we minimize or eliminate those things. And then we've enabled people for action.